Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a well known media personality and author from Delhi, India, Sahar Zaman. Sahar, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashutosh, so much for having me.
Thank you. Sahar is an award winning TV news editor and a non-fiction author. Her debut book is titled Talat Mahmood, The Definitive Biography. And I'm sure all of you know Talat Mahmood. I even today keep listening to all his amazing songs.
Lovely.
This book has been written by Sahar to mark the centenary year of the legendary singer in 2024, and he was her granduncle. And given all the work that Sahar has done in so many different areas, understandably, she's been recognized, awarded, and felicitated several times. So, Sahar, before we start talking about your book, you had such an impressive career spanning over 2 decades in journalism. What first drew you to this field and how did you start?
Well, I think it started in school
Okay.
because I used to do a lot of public speaking in school, and I would organize a lot of annual shows and mark important events on the yearly calendar of school. I was the head girl of school, so I was doing a lot more public speaking on stage than one usually does. And I realized I like the idea of mass media, of speaking to the public on a large scale. And that's where the career option of communication came in. I was very interested in photography and still photography. I've learned that while I was studying journalism. I love the process of television production, of shooting and then writing your script to the shots, writing a script which is a conversational script connected to the shots that you've taken. I love the post edit process, and I love current affairs, world politics, national politics, current affairs. So I think all of that, the answer to all of those interests of mine was mass media and journalism. So
Yes.
that's how I got into it.
How wonderful. How wonderful. So now let's come to your book,
Okay.
you've written about your granduncle, Mr. Talat Mahmood. Talat Mahmood is a household name. Everybody has heard him singing, irrespective of whatever age group he or she may be. Um, Tell me a little bit about your own experiences with him and what inspired you to write this book.
Well, I always say that the book is an extension of my journalism, because it's a non-fiction book. It's about a real life. It's about a real person.
Yeah.
It's about real incidents. So I call it an extension of my journalism because it meant about writing a story. It's just that
Mm,
instead of 5,000 or 2,000 words, you're writing a story of. My book is about 90,000 words plus, so
mm,
I'm writing a
mm.
very large story,
Yeah.
and it required the same approach of journalistic rigor, of cross-checking facts, of putting things together in a timeline, in a chronological order, of analyzing instances, a lot of family stories, which I didn't just take down on face value as family
Mm,
stories. I had to do a lot of cross fact checking on family stories, or
mm,
whether it's matching with the timeline or what is being said, all of that. So
mm,
it's an extension of my journalism in that sense, but there is a
mm,
very, very, of course, strong personal connect as well, because he was my granduncle, and I have lovely childhood memories with him.
mm.
I spent my early years with him, and he passed away when I was just entering college. I had just finished school,
Yeah.
so I have spent a considerable amount of
Correct.
time with him. We used to go to Bombay, spend our holidays, summer holidays, at his home.
Mm,
Um, but a very inspirational story.
mm.
I was My interest as a journalist was piqued in his story and the kind of iconic life that he led, and
Yeah.
this came to me when I started a tribute series in his name, and this was
Mm,
around 2017, and I called it Jashne Talat, a
mm,
celebration of
mm,
Talat.
Mm.
And it was all about his music. Participants and established singers were all supposed to sing his songs. There were dancers who would dance on his songs, original soundtracks.
Mm.
There were portrait artists who would paint live portraits on stage while
Mm.
the performances were going on. So that kind of a curation uh, brought me more close to his career in kind of studying it and analyzing it as a journalist, because
Yeah.
my childhood interactions with him have been more like a sweet gramps at home who's taking care of our holiday, who's taking us
Correct.
around, showing us Bombay around.
Mm.
And I realized, I think the timing was really nice. In due time, I realized that there's so much more that he's done which doesn't fit in a two
Mm.
hour or a 3 hour concert. And his story goes beyond that.
Right.
And in 2020, I thought that by the time we hit this year, which is 2024,
Mm.
which is a centenary. So if I really want to do something more than just a concert, I should write a book, and
Mm.
the process of writing and getting the draft ready and designing and layout and photography and
Yeah.
promotions, all
Yeah.
of that put together would take about 2 years. So that's
Mm.
exactly what happened. I started writing in 2022 and got the book ready for release in 2 years to
Amazing.
mark his centenary. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. And would you remember any interesting anecdotes from your time when you would go and spend time with him in Bombay?
Honestly, a lot of it was just how a kid interacts with your granddad,
Mm.
your granduncle.
Yeah.
But of course, there were stories around him. There were so many family stories, a lot of them that have come in first time in the book, which
Mm.
are very interesting for golden era followers, of what happened behind the scenes. How did the songs recording take place? How did the shoot of this film take place? But as a person, I felt um, he carried himself very lightly, for all that he achieved. I mean, at the end of the day, he was a Padma Bhushan
Yeah.
rewardee by the government of India. And he had so many pioneering landmarks in his career, such
Mm.
as starting world tour concerts. He was the
Mm.
first playback singer from India to start world tours.
Wow.
And he did that in 1956. And following him, his friends, Mukesh, Lata Didi, they all started their world tours, and that's how the whole industry
Mm.
started, of going out and
Yep.
performing for the Asian diaspora or the NRIs.
Mm.
And then he played a very significant role in the royalty rights battle
Mm-hmm.
for playback singers, because when he took on in his official capacity as the secretary of the Playback Singers Association, he led the first protest that the film industry ever saw. It was a 3 months, I call it the mic down protest, like,
Mm-hmm.
writers and bureaucrats have the pen down
Yeah.
protest. So this was a mic down protest where recording was shut in the film
Mm.
industry for 3 months. So there were a lot of these pioneering aspects which he carried very lightly.
Amazing.
I mean, I feel if someone of this generation, or even if I had done so much, I would have been blowing my trumpet much more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very well said. Very well
uh,
said.
and he always followed his heart, and
Mm.
without spelling it out to me directly, he actually just told me to follow my heart in whatever I
Mm.
have to do.
Mm.
And looking back, I'm glad I did that in my life as well.
Very well said. And when you were, as you mentioned a few minutes back, you did a lot of research for your book.
Right.
What were some of the very interesting or surprising or lesser known facts about Talat Mahmood that came up?
Talat Mahmood, the mold breaker, and Talat Mahmood, the activist.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
no one really looked at him that way before I really put it down in my book and
Hmm.
spelled it out, Talat the activist, because a mold breaker in the sense, the kind of steps he took in his life and for the film industry as well.
Hmm.
He's, I mean, apart from his phenomenal career in films in the golden era, he has a separate career in Bengali songs,
Hmm.
and because he sang in the name of Tapan Kumar when he was starting out his career in the
Hmm.
1940s. So he
Yeah.
has an entirely separate, full-fledged career in modern Bangla music. And modern
Wow.
Bangla music, which was something that was taking shape in the build-up to independence, and he was a pillar of modern Bangla music movement.
Hmm.
And then after the golden era, or parallel to the golden era, he was of course very dedicated to his original genre of ghazals. So he was
Hmm.
called the king of ghazals.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, he was the first in post-independence in
Hmm.
independent India, who was the first king of ghazals, and he inspired the next generation, which were
Hmm.
other stalwarts like Jagjit Singh Ji and
Hmm.
Mehdi Hasan
Hmm.
Saab, and they
Hmm.
both, in their lifetime, both of them had said that if it wasn't for Talat Mahmood, they would have never thought of becoming ghazal
Wow.
singers. So
Wow.
he established India's non-film ghazal music industry
Hmm.
as a saleable market, that could sell records independently away from the film music.
Hmm.
In that sense, I think, taglines were missing. I think
Hmm.
that's what my book has done, because that's how I've chaptered a lot of my
Right.
sub chapters in the book as well.
Hmm.
That whenever there was a tribute to Talat Mahmood, it was predominantly King of Ghazals and predominantly the Velvet Voice.
Hmm.
And while writing this book, I realized that there is so much more to him, and
Correct.
so many more titles that he belongs to,
Hmm.
uh, that one has never really spoken about before this book came out.
Hmm. Hmm. Very interesting. And my next question for you, Sahar, is that, you know, Talat Mahmood's music has a timeless quality, and you just mentioned a velvet voice.
Right.
What do you think has kept his songs so relevant and so contemporary
Hmm.
over so many years? I know my mother used to listen. I've been listening to it, and I was seeing my children listen. I hope my granddaughter listens as well.
Wow. So that's like how many generations? Four
Four
generations.
generations, yeah.
Lovely. I think it's the quality of voice, the quality of music, and the quality of lyrics. All
Hmm.
of those factors put together.
Hmm.
And I say this not just for Talat Mahmood, I say this for all our legends of the golden era,
Yeah.
especially and only the golden era.
Hmm.
They're the only ones who have this kind of stretched 3, 4 generations across shelf life.
Correct.
And one feels that passion when you hear these songs, the
Hmm.
ethos with which these songs were sung. There's a very interesting reflection on this that I have in my book, that this was a generation which lived through India's freedom struggle.
Hmm.
This was a generation which decided to stand for India's secularism. Many
Hmm.
of them had the choice to go to the other side of the border, but didn't,
Hmm.
such as Talat Mahmood himself. He very,
Hmm.
put his foot down and decided that a secular India is what he would choose, and stand
Hmm.
for its values and stand for creating this new nation, with so much hope and passion.
Right.
And so, whatever work they did in that from 1940s onwards, 50s, 60s, that is the bracket of the golden era. Whatever work they did was not much about creating their own brand, but they did it for brand India. They worked for creating an identity in films and music, uh, for a new country, uh, for which they didn't necessarily fight for, but they
Right.
lived through the
Yeah.
freedom movement, and they
Yeah.
took those decisions to stand for India.
Hmm.
So I think a lot of that passion shines through. We have great artists today, but we're also in a generation where we're building our own individual brand.
Hmm.
Artists of that time were building brand India.
Correct. Correct. What a great response. Thank you. Sir, how does your biography explore Talat Mahmood's artistic legacy,
Mhm.
especially for a lot of our viewers and listeners who may not be familiar with his music?
Right. So I got great feedback, because I'm very fortunate that it's been reviewed multiple times across various platforms of the national media, be it
Hmm.
television,
Yeah.
print, and even digital.
Hmm.
And digital media is where you have the youngsters, where you have the next
Correct.
generation of journalists. So when I spoke to journalists of the digital platforms, such as Lullen Top and The Quint, and when they read my book to review it, and when they called me to their studio to interview me for the book,
Hmm.
I specifically asked them, how much did you really connect to the book? Because even when I was writing the book, there was something very much I focused even while I was writing the book. I was very conscious of the fact that I don't want someone to pick up the book and think that it's a slice of history and
Mm,
it belongs to a different era and it doesn't belong to today.
mm,
So I put in what I learned in television to write a chatty, conversational, spoken style,
mm,
to write the book in that manner.
mm,
And there's so many sub chapters.
mm,
There are multiple. If you see the contents page itself runs into about 4 5 pages because I've
mm.
given it multiple sub chapters,
Yeah.
and they're really like headline clicks. What
Mm,
a digital reader is used to. You pick
mm,
out a headline, a sub chapter title, you read that. It's about 3 4 pages, and you leave it. That's the
mm,
attention span. But you
mm,
can go back to and pick it up from any other subchapter and read it as a separate article, so to say.
mm,
So and the things that he did in his life, whether it's about fusion, experimenting with the style of ghazal music, trying the Hawaiian guitar and drums for traditional ghazals,
right.
standing up for royalty rights, doing
Mm,
global tours and concerts, and building the brand for music from India at an
mm,
international platform. Journalists of the next generation today, while interviewing, he said that they didn't feel the weight of history while reading the
mm.
book.
Yeah.
They felt that this is an artist who is exploring and experimenting and is at young at heart and has the passion to take the music ahead,
Mm,
which was very satisfying for me, which I
mm,
felt was really the bigger task. I mean, I know people are coming to read about this. Essentially, his fans are coming in to read about him, his personal life, which is not really known much to people, about his professional milestones. But I feel very blessed that I've been able to tap the next generation about a story, you
well
know.
said. Well said. Well said. And based on all the discussions you've had all over with so many different people, did you also get any interesting feedback on how Talat Mahmood's music has actually shaped contemporary Indian music?
Um, no,
Hmm.
the music belongs to an era.
Okay.
The music is not something that can be created today.
Hmm.
It can be appreciated today.
Hmm.
Um, it can be looked at with a lot of wow effect and a lot of marvel, but it's not something that can be created today.
Hmm.
So it's looked at as something which is phenomenal, something which is great to have in our treasure trove,
Hmm.
but it's not something that can be really. I mean, even though it's appreciated today, but it's the softness in the voice or the kind of compositions or the kind of lyrics that is um, that is not something really I feel coming down to the contemporary,
Hmm.
and I say this for film music
Yeah.
because our film music has changed so
Correct.
dramatically. But
Correct.
when I talk about ghazals, when I talk about his ghazals,
Hmm.
that is something very much contemporary even
Hmm.
today.
Hmm.
So as
Yes.
far as his ghazals are concerned,
Yeah.
they can still be something that today's ghazal singers will sing. I mean, I have ghazal singers, very senior, well-established ghazal singers who've
Hmm.
performed for my Jashn Talat platform,
Hmm.
and they felt great singing his ghazals today.
Hmm.
And a lot of them have kind of reworked the composition and brought in um, what do you call the beatbox, and they brought in the guitar and the
Hmm.
beatbox and tried
Hmm.
to contemporize it and make it their own.
Yeah.
So that has happened with his ghazals.
Hmm. Amazing. So I have time for two more questions.
Okay.
Um, do you see a biopic in the making about Mr. Tat Mahmood? And if yes, what would the next steps be? Because what an amazing story he has.
Yes, what an amazing, exciting story, which
Yeah.
goes beyond the film studios and recording studios, especially his world tours. There's some such exciting stories,
Hmm.
like very adventurous, so to say, which
Hmm.
really make it biopic material.
Mhm.
That he's on this train to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, and he's stopped in the middle in a city. Suddenly, there's a chain that is pulled, and he's stopped, and he's very worried what's happened. So there are people
Hmm.
who suddenly enter the train, his coach, and say that you have to perform for us. Get down of the
Wow.
train right now. Why
Hmm.
isn't our city in your itinerary? Please
Amazing.
get down and perform. So
Hmm.
there are a lot of these adventures in the book as well.
Hmm.
I see it becoming a biopic. I've seen a lot of wonderful lives um, uh, transformed into a biopic, and
Hmm.
I very much see this happening. I've shared my book with a lot of filmmakers and a few production houses as well,
Hmm.
and it's something that will take time,
Hmm.
but I don't think it's something that will not happen. I
No,
see it happening in a few years.
absolutely. And of course, his music will always live on. But my last question for you, um, given the amount of work you've put into writing this book about Mr. Talat Mahmood, what do you hope readers will take away from this book as an author?
um, I think they will look at this as a very inspiring
Hmm.
life, um, that made a lot of impossible things happen
Yeah.
only because of an adventure and hope in spirit. So
Hmm.
it's essentially a very inspiring story, and a very successful one as well.
Hmm.
And as I said, that I felt that several times in my interactions with him, he said that follow your heart. So because this is about a generation, this is
Yeah.
about his life where you took up music in the film industry and music at a time when it wasn't Bollywood, it wasn't this
Yeah.
big film industry giving you multi-crore returns. It was
Hmm.
something that you just went in for passion,
Correct. Correct.
and that's something that I did for journalism as well. I mean, all
Hmm.
through my life in writing and in television and covering news and current affairs and elections, and all of that was all about the passion of telling a story, all about the passion of talking about
Yeah.
civil rights, the passion of social issues,
Hmm.
uh, and follow your heart. It's just a hugely inspiring story.
Amazing. Amazing. And on that note, Sahar, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own interest in journalism, and that was followed up with such an incredible discussion about Mr. Talat Mahmood. I mean,
Thank you.
new things I've learned. He was the guy who pioneered royalty for music. He's the person who pioneered foreign tours for Indian musicians, which now Indian singers who are now of course people are performing all over the world. He's
And all the
also
time,
all
yes.
the time. He's also, I didn't know this, that he was one of the pioneers of ghazals, and of course he was an activist. And finally, you said it twice, and I think that's a very powerful piece of advice to every single viewer and listener. Mr. Talat Mahmood's advice to his grand niece: follow your heart. I think on that
Yes.
note, what a powerful message. Thank you so much for speaking to me, and all the very best to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Lovely talking.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the brand called You Videocast and Podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.